Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I know this is the post-lunch session, so everyone's probably going to be nodding off. So we'll try to keep it as short and sweet as possible. As I was introduced, I'm Sindoor Mittal, Director at Welspun Energy. I'm not sure if you know too much about us, but Welspun is one of the largest employers in the state of Gujarat. We have 21,000 employees in the state of Gujarat itself, out of about 25,000 in total. So over 80% of our workforce is out of Gujarat. So one of the largest reasons why we set up our entire plants and factories in Gujarat itself is that when we came in post the earthquake that happened in Kutch, we actually saw the reconstruction and the redevelopment that had taken place. That was, under the vision of Shri Modi ji was taking place. And we really felt this was one of the most progressive thinking, vision that one could look at. And we were one of the first companies at that point to really get into, Anjar and Kutch. And that's when, we really started off in a large way in Gujarat. I think, Gujarat has done a wonderful job in terms of taking the initiative forward to, develop the skill building and develop educational institutions. I think PDPU is a wonderful example of that. And, we are proud to be a part of that story. So at the same time, I think though government has a very large role to play in education as a sector, I think it's not just the educational institutions, but also the industry which can be a key player in contributing to the growth of the sector and to contributing to the skill development. So I think, one can't look at just educational institutions or government and, put the onus on them to deliver this. But unfortunately, when we look at hiring and when we look at taking in fresh graduates, what we find is that almost 70 to 80% of the students that we are looking at are not directly employable, in the sense that we need to actually put them through almost a year of training before we can take them on board. So I think that's one area that still needs to be, I would say, drastically improved. Again, it's not only the institutions that need to do that. It's also the industry that can play a role in developing that. So my presentation today is really going to be more personal. It's a case study of our learnings in the solar energy sector, which is an area that I've been part of the founding of and been involved with from the day it's begun at Welspun. So just to give you a very brief, Welspun Energy has about 50 megawatts of operating solar plants within Gujarat, and we have a total of 300 megawatts across India in different stages of construction and operation. So we've taken our learnings from across these plants. We've been involved in a large way. Gujarat is our largest operating capacity to date, so we played a larger role in the state itself. And I just thought we could share our learnings from an industry perspective in terms of what we look for in the workforce, in the fresh graduates that are coming in. So I thought I'd just get into that. So our journey in the solar PV segment started in Gujarat. We came out with our first plant of 15 megawatts in Anjar and Kutch itself. And since then, as I said, we've set up a large capacity of 50 megawatts of operational project. And Gujarat has been one of the states which has been has been the leading player, in the sense they've been the first state to actually come out with a solar policy in India. And it was the first state, in the first year itself of solar starting in India, the entire capacity in Gujarat was more than the rest of the country put together. So that's just a small example of the progressive nature of the state. And we were part of the solar policy building right from its inception. So I thought this would be a good example to kind of get into. So when we look at solar PV generation, and that's what we are into the generation side of the business, not into the manufacturing side. Across the value chain of the solar PV plant, there are lots of different types of jobs that we've looked at, and overall we've looked at about 52 different types of jobs that one can look at, which we've categorized into 4 large pieces. So one is the business development side, which is before you win the project and you actually get into signing of the PPA, etc. And in fact, it was at Vibrant Gujarat itself 3 to 4 years ago that we signed our first MOU with the state of Gujarat to develop these plants. The next phase obviously is to get into the project financing mode, with the banks, etc. Third is the project management, which is the key part of the business, and this includes the construction part of it. We as a player are also into the EPC, so we do our own EPC for our plants. And finally, once the plant has been commissioned, we look at the O&M part of it. So across these 4 categories, there are about 52 kind of jobs that we've looked at within this industry itself. And the next step, what we did is we just broadly categorized these into 4 levels of skill. So one is an advanced skill set, one is semi-skilled, one is skilled, and one is unskilled. So we broadly just categorize these into these 4 different levels. And each of these 4 have a different way in which industry and institution can actually partner with. So for example, if you look at an advanced level skill set, what we've looked at is the institution level as well as the organization level. What are the things that the institution can do, and what are the things that the organization can do, to actually develop these skill sets. So at the advanced level, we looked at the institution and we said that what are the things that we can do? So can we look at putting in place a curriculum on renewable energy? So for example, at PDPU itself, the MBA students that are going through the course, they are doing energy, petrochemicals, but renewable energy is a different sector per se, and there is no specialized focus on that. So it's very different from, let's say, the thermal energy sector or the hydro sector, and the small scale renewable sector that we look at has a very different level of requirement. So I think those kind of things wherein, looking at the curriculum itself. I think the other thing is looking at internships with developers, introduction of a diploma or certificate program in renewable energy. I think one of the things that, for example, Gujarat itself has done is that they have an ITI from where we actually went in and recruited. It was held in Patan last year, and we went and recruited people from there for our solar PV plant. So that was an example of specialized courses in this area. And at the developer level, we look at what are the things we can do. So we can do in-house training, which we anyway need to get into. And we would, Welspun would get into that. Knowledge management, can we have a, centralized knowledge database that, let's say, an incoming student could come into and directly tap into instead of, learning through the year and through the job. Mandated mentoring. So this is something that we do in our organization. We generally have senior level people who get assigned as a mentor to each graduate that's coming in. Which may not directly be their boss. In fact, it would not be their boss. So we would have a mentor to actually, walk the student through other areas and practicalities of the business. And finally, participation in quality improvement projects. So, once we are doing, constructing our projects, we actually go through ongoing quality as well as post-mortem of exercises. And that's where we kind of look at bringing in these students into. So that's one example of skills that both the institution and organization can do in terms of skill building. Finally, in terms of we look at a holistic approach to skill development. And, during the project phase, approximately 4 to 5% of employees are engaged in the infrastructure sector are from the organized workforce. So some of the actions that we have taken, I've just talked about, I wanted to talk about a few of those. One is we developed the Train the Trainer program, wherein these institutes that are existing, we actually send in our people, and we also have PhDs in our working with us. But even other than that, we send in our people to actually work with the trainer itself, the teachers itself, and the professors at these institutions. Sorry. And this would probably be more for a technical level institution, so that they could train them, and in turn that could flow through to the students. The second is we look at working on a PPP model, wherein we partner with an institution to collaborate on sharing of knowledge. So for example, we worked with the MIT Energy Institution, Massachusetts Institute of Technology, wherein the Energy Institute we partnered with them. We partnered with PDPU itself as of today. in terms of going forward on knowledge sharing. I think the third thing that we look at is, can we look at a qualification and a certification framework? This is their, similar program exists in the UK, wherein they have standards, for vocational qualification and accreditation. So this actually makes it a much more level playing field and fixed standards in which industry or companies like us can come in and go to these institutions and recruit from there. Fourthly, we look at a social partnership. I think what Wellspan Energy has done differently is that we actually go down to the ground and see that can we start recruiting locally. Can we actually work with the community to come back with and to work with. So all our people that are there in the O&M field, for example, in operations and maintenance, are all locally hired, and they're from the community itself. We also look at partnering with the society locally in terms of, can we look at sponsorship opportunities for the youth for technical programs at the panchayat level. There's an interesting program that Rajasthan is doing, wherein they actually hire or they train the local women in the area to actually work on solar. So that's a great community level engagement where they come in and they could actually work at a, do small things like work as a technician or electrician kind of a work, and they've actually been trained only for solar. So they know exactly what to do, and if there's a problem in the field, they're able to diagnose what the problem is and actually solve the simpler problems. And they also know when they have to escalate it to their superiors. So it's a very simple training. It's probably given only for 1 month, but it makes them much more relevant directly to be picked up into industry. And finally, continuing education and training. We continue to support our own employees in terms of going abroad for training, coming to institutions to pick up what is the latest research and development that is going on, and come back to the organization. While I end my communication, I just wanted to thank you for paying attention post lunch, but also just share that Gujarat produces about 700,000 graduates and about 20,000 skilled and semi-skilled technical people every year who will need employment in the new and ongoing and changing situation. And the renewable energy space is one area which is the next generation growing boom business. I mean, if we look at India itself, we are facing a shortage in terms of fuel supply, both from the coal as well as the gas fuel. So I think renewable is one area where we don't have that kind of dependence on maybe import or in terms of whether it's domestic coal which is lying under forest cover. So apart from the fact that it's clean, we are also moving towards grid parity. So in the wind industry, we've already kind of reached the similar tariffs that thermal power is at. And solar is very, very close to grid parity, and we should see that definitely in the next few years. So I think, this is one of the sectors that is, going to provide the jobs for the future. And if institutions can look at incorporating this, especially when they're focused on energy and, as it is, I think that could be a very good area to really focus on. And we would definitely be happy to participate in that. Thank you very much.